Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How's your day been so far?
Day's been pretty good.
It's so funny. We met at NAMM.
We did.
That was quite an experience. Let's backtrack because I'm really curious to know more about how you got started, what brought you to music.
The very beginning.
Yeah.
First, I was born, and then, let's fast forward. So I was 13 years old, and I wanted to be a rapper. Of course, I probably wouldn't say that publicly, but I just did. So I wanted to be a rapper, and this is like before Eminem, like just before Eminem, like really like blew up. Like it was just something that I really loved to do. And I got into music. I kind of didn't really fit in anywhere because, in the music business, I mean, at 13, obviously I wasn't in the circles that I'm in now, clearly. But in the music business, I look at it kind of as like, it's like a merry-go-round, and it's moving, and it's never going to stop to let you on. And you really have to run alongside it and just jump on when you can and grab a hold of something, and then use that to pull yourself on, and grab a hold of something else. And then you just hang on and hope that you don't get thrown off.
It's a great analogy.
And thank you. I really just wanted to work with anyone that would work with me. And I started literally at the bottom. I think the first piece of gear I ever bought was a 76 key Korg Triton Pro. I bought it off of eBay. It was like one of those rare, super cheap listings. And I got really lucky because that was like the keyboard to have at one point. I mean, that was the whole Neptune sound was that Korg Triton. I mean,
yeah.
I think grinding was like that whole B116 patch on there, that B116 percussion patch. I was doing all my beats on there. And prior to that, I was recording songs, as a rapper, and just, I ultimately, it wasn't, I realized that it wasn't the actual being an artist side of things that made me want to do music. It was I loved the process of just making it. And so after a while, I just kind of realized like I didn't want to be an artist. I just wanted to be a producer and a songwriter, and being a mixer kind of came out of necessity because I didn't have money to pay anyone to do it for me. And so years down the road, I ended up working on this song for Pitbull. I think I was like 17 or 18 years old. And it was called Midnight. It was on his Boat Lift album. And that was like my first major credit. I remember MTV was putting together Menudo again. Okay. So I had mixed the original version, and Jimmy got brought in because when they sent the vocals, like all the bottom end was like rolled off of them to the point where like we needed something to put it back. And at the time I'm a kid, I'm in the box, I'm working off of a 14-inch power book. I didn't have half of what Jimmy has. And so I had kind of like idolized Jimmy like for so long because he did so many of my favorite records. And I remember finding out that like he was going to actually do I mixed the beat and he ended up mixing the vocals on that. And finding out that I was going to be in the studio with him, I was like super excited. I couldn't wait. Like I was nervous as hell though. And I remember I'm sitting in there, we're in Studio D at Hit Factory. And so I just wanted to be of value. And Jimmy, he's Jimmy Douglas. So I'm in the back of the room, because he's really fast with the analog stuff, but I was like, oh, I could give him this tip with Pro Tools to make him faster with doing this and save him some time. And I kept giving him pieces of advice, and like he took a few of them and he was like, oh, thanks, that was helpful. And then eventually he turned around and he goes, Keith, shut the F up. And I was like, I don't know if I can curse on here, but
you can,
but yeah.
If you want
So he's like, shut the F up. I'm gonna keep it clean in case there's any kids watching. But and I'm like, no. Jimmy Douglas just told me to shut up. Like, this is not good. Like, I can't. I'm embarrassed right now. And so I stepped out of the room for a minute at some point, and I came back, and I could tell like Jimmy didn't like me for that reason, because I was annoying him. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to like hold my own in there, you know? So I said to him, I said, Jimmy, I said, look, I apologize. I don't mean to be a pain or be annoying. I said, I just want you to know, like I've always looked up to you, and I'm sitting here in the room and I just want to be of value. Like, I don't want to be just some guy that sits in the back of the room and doesn't contribute. And he looks at me and he goes, I appreciate that, Keith. He's like, you know what? I respect that. He's like, it's all good. Let's start over. I think this was like 2007, 2008, something like that. And then Jimmy was kind of like the first person that took me under his wing. It's not that I learned a ton of technical stuff from Jimmy, but he taught me how to listen to things. Like, I think that's for mixers, especially mixers that are just getting started, they don't know what to listen for. And so they don't know what things are supposed to sound like because they're just guessing at it. And that was me at one point. I remember I had just finished this mix on this song for this girl, Chanel, and I couldn't wait for him to hear it. And it was called Back to You. And I was so excited. I called him. I said, Jimmy, can I come by the studio? I'm like, I got to play you this mix. I think it's the best mix I ever did. And he's like, yeah, come by. So I go to his spot, and I put on the song, and like, I'm just sitting there with a smile on my face. I'm like, man, this is going to be great. As soon as I'm done, he's going to give me props for this. This is going to be awesome. And then the music stops. I'm like, so what do you think? And he goes, you want my honest opinion, Keith? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what were you thinking? And I'm like, what? And I thought he was joking at first. And he's like, listen to my effing voice. Do you hear an effing hiss on top of my effing voice? And I'm like, well, no. And he's like, then why would you put it on her effing voice? And I was like, okay, it's embarrassing, but it makes sense. And then he's like, listen, when you EQ a piano, it should sound like a piano. And when you EQ a vocal, it should sound like a vocal. And that was actually one of the most important moments probably in my whole career in terms of like sonically shaping records. And it sounds like something so simple, but people don't necessarily think that way. And that really changed everything for me. Like that was I would say, conceptually the biggest point of growth sonically in my whole career was that moment, getting yelled at by Jimmy. Yes. I always appreciated it. I mean, it was great to hear. But in any case, so in between that time, you know, I've been really lucky to work with people that had done like legendary records. You know, my first placement was the song by Ashanti and Robin Thicke. It was Things You Make Me Do. And I did the track and the hook to that. And I did it in my bedroom. And Seven Aurelius got me my first placement. At the time, like, he kind of was a huge part of the sound of radio. I mean, it might not have been exactly at his highest point, but I mean, he did all the big Ashanti records, Ja Rule records, anything from Murder Inc. was him. He did Thug's Mansion for Tupac and Gangsta Lovin' for Eve and Alicia Keys, and he did like so many big records. And so it was definitely an interesting situation. And it kind of happened all fast. And I think what I took from that situation was like, I really thought I made it. Like my first placement, and Robin Thicke was huge at the time. And then what I realized was your first placement can be deceptive, but yeah, it just means you have a lot more work to get done. And now the clock is ticking, because as soon as you accomplish something like that, you got to follow it up. And if you don't, then you're even further back where you started, because, you know, it's one thing to make a first impression. You have all the time leading up to that to make a first impression, but then to follow it up, you don't have the same amount of time.
And it's crazy how we can really put pressure on ourselves.
There is a pressure there. Like once you do something big, you know, that gets a lot of recognition, you kind of have to follow it up, or it looks like you lost momentum. And sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it's a timing thing. Like I've had plenty of projects that I've worked on, you know, that were supposed to follow up something big that I just worked on. And the projects get delayed, and, you know, that's what you're working on at the moment. So there's nothing you can work on in its place. You kind of have to wait. I think that it's really important when you get a big opportunity to not just focus on necessarily what you accomplished, but who are the surrounding people that you accomplished it with or through. And the reason for that is because if I always tell people, look, if you can make a hit today, you can make a hit tomorrow, and you can make a hit the day after. At the end of the day, like you really, you have to pay attention to those people that really made it happen for you. I feel like, of course there are times where you may outgrow certain people in terms of their reach, but you should never leave people behind. And ultimately, if you have a formula that works, you stick with it. And that's like the biggest piece of advice I could ever give to anyone is like, if you ever watched a movie about drug dealers, even though that's a really bad example in terms of influence, but if you ever watched the movie about drug dealers, when did everything all go bad? It was the second they changed what worked. If you look at Scarface, when they changed people that were washing their money, that's when everything went downhill from there. If or when you bring someone new into the crew that takes over for everyone else, and it throws a monkey wrench in things, that's when things go downhill. And it's kind of been something for me is like loyalty is actually rewarded with more opportunity from my experience. It doesn't mean you can't meet new people. It doesn't mean that you can't vibe with new people or work with new people. It just means never throw away the people that you came up with, because those are ultimately the people that are going to grow with you and that are going to ultimately create more opportunities for you.
It's really nice to feel like you've got a community of people around you that you can connect with, talk to, work with. Like, I think that is one of the areas that Miami is kind of growing in right now. What do you think about Miami as a music community? Like, you can compare it to other cities if you want, but I'm just kind of curious to know.
Miami as a music scene, there are very diverse pockets of music going on, because we have such a huge Latin scene down here. Mm-hmm. And then we have the urban scene, and then we have the pop circuit. In the Latin world, I think there's amazing things happening. I think that there's so many people that are really just doing great music. See, the thing is, Miami, a lot of the music that circulates here isn't necessarily from people who live here, but it's kind of become like what New York is to the English music industry. It's kind of like Miami's become that to the Latin industry.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you mean like people like to come here and work on music?
Yeah, absolutely.
They love it. They love the weather. Yeah. They love just the vibe, but they get out.
Yeah. Miami is definitely a place you can get into some trouble for sure. I think that in the hip hop community down here, I just wish that people would kind of try to have their own identity instead of fit in a little more.
Is this here or just hip hop in general?
Possibly hip hop in general, but there's a lot of great artists that are still doing great music. So I don't know. It's just, I feel like when people have an opportunity to identify themselves as an artist, they should set themselves apart from everyone, But I get it though, because everyone wants to fit within the same sphere of what people are gravitating towards already. And for people that are just starting in music, or for people that are trying to find their way in music, they go off of what they can emulate first, because those are their influences. So I totally understand that. I just wish there was a little more musicality, I guess, in hip hop now, than there is. A lot of it's the same content, and I'm gonna get shot for sure when I leave here. No. Someone's gonna be outside and shoot me, but I think that at least that's what I'd like to see, and I think some of that hype around the same thing is.
I'm sorry, wait, I'm laughing because I'm gonna let you finish.
I think no, I was just gonna say I think it's starting to die off. I mean, there hasn't been a #1 hip hop record this year, and so I think people are ready for something new and something different and with a little bit more depth musically.
Okay.
You were saying.
When did you build your studio?
I started building my studio in 2019. It wasn't done until 2020. I built it twice because the first guy screwed it up so badly. When I built this place, I wanted to make sure that I had everything, the best of whatever I could get, because I wanted to be able to be there and not have to be in other places. And I wanted the vibe to be amazing, and I wanted, whoever was there to feel great being there. So I could avoid stuff like that, and no one can get to my place without the guard gate calling me. So it's great. But I called a good friend of mine, Andre Mendoza. He's got a company called Drazani, and they build some of the most beautiful studios I've ever seen in my life. And they do phenomenal work. Andre, if you're watching this, I want my commissions. Thank you. He does amazing work. And I had this whole concept for my spot, and I was like heavily influenced by Nikola Tesla. I know it's nerdy as hell, but I'm a big Nikola Tesla fan. And so that was kind of like my inspiration for the room. So my ceiling is like all stars, and I got like shooting stars that go across, and I got tons of lights through there, and I've got like industrial elements. So he did an amazing job on my studio. It's one of my favorite rooms I've ever worked in. Yeah, and I took my gear from my other place and added a lot to it, and it's kind of where we're at now.
Did you always just kind of have a little home set up and then you made it official?
Always. Like I always felt like it was super important, because whenever a client needed something, I didn't want to have to get in the car and drive somewhere. I mean, honestly, some of the biggest stuff I ever worked on was in the bedroom of my old house. I just kind of built my setup to a point where I kind of outgrew the room. And when I bought this new place in 2019, I said, I'm going to build my dream studio. And so I did. And it was everything, excuse me, it was everything that I wanted my studio to be.
It's an emotional thing. I get it.
But yeah, so it was everything I wanted it to be, like in terms of vibe and acoustically. I mean, that room is like if you walk in there and close the door, you feel like you're in a different space, and it's like a full commercial build out. So it was really cool. I was super happy to have it. It took a year to get that room done, but Dre did an amazing job. And honestly, Rob Roy and Tony Bon Jovi, who own Power Station Studios, they saved me acoustically in that room. They came by and they figured out like some major acoustical issues that we needed to solve, and the room just came out great. So yeah, I've been in there for about 4 years now, or close to 4. Yeah, I think it was like
close to 4.
Yeah, I think it was like something like 4 years, and I love it. My biggest problem is that like I didn't want to have any sidecars, because I knew that if I did, I would end up filling them up. So I got like an Argosy desk with like 3 bays worth of stuff, and not only is it full, but like I have more gear than I can fit in there. And now I think I'm probably getting a sidecar like next week, something like that. But I kind of have to do it now, and I got more stuff on the way. I suck, but anyway.
No, I think that's a great not even problem to have.
Yeah,
you have stuff that you want to work with, that you want to use. So you're an outboard gear kind of person.
I love it. Man, it's just something about when you're in the analog world. It's just there's a life. It's like it's not ones and zeros. You're moving electrons, and you can feel the difference. I told you the other day I did my first mix recently in the box just to see what it felt like. There's just certain things that you get from analog. I actually loved the transient response, doing things in the box, and I loved just kind of having a blank palette to work with a lot of this stuff. But even when I was working in the box, like I was still printing back through a lot of my outboard stuff. One of my favorite pieces to do that with is this product from Handsome Audio called the Zulu. And have you seen those before?
I've seen them, yeah.
So yeah, so it's like it's a passive box and it sits on your desk. Actually, Langston, who's the genius that invented all that stuff, he's coming out with a 500 series version of it very soon, which I will be getting for sure. 2 of them.
A set.
Yes. And but they're amazing. It really sounds like you're going to tape. But the difference is you can do things with it that you couldn't really do with tape, because you can put certain kinds of tape with certain tape machines, like certain tape formulas with certain tape machines that you could never
do with actual tape machines.
Yeah. And so that sounds freaking amazing. It's so good. So I run a lot of things back through that, and I also use it as almost like a parallel mix bus. So I send like some of things here and there to it. But for the in the box purposes, I was running a lot of things back through the Zulu, and also what was I using at the time? Oh, my vocals. Always, every single record for the last, I don't even know how many years, probably close to 10 years, every vocal goes through my Kush Audio Electra EQs. And so I was printing stuff back through that and through my Lavery Gold. And that was kind of my process with the in the box stuff. So like it kind of became like a print it back in, but still come out digitally type thing. And it really worked. It worked great. It was a little more time consuming in some cases and a little less in others. I think on the front end it's more time consuming. On the back end it's less, because then when you go to do your stems and stuff like that, you can bounce offline versus having to print back. But during the process, you're printing individual stems, anyway. It's probably something an assistant could do, but that would be a different story if I had an assistant. I do it all myself. So that I guess it kind of balanced out, but I did like what it sounded like in the end. I was very happy with it.
It's cool that you experiment, right? Like you try to go in the box, but like what works for you. And like you said in the beginning, like if you find a method, stick to it. Like if you find what works for you, just like go with it. Be open to new things and new tools, new approaches, but if you know what works.
I love it though. I love trying new stuff, because when you do the same thing every time, it kind of feels like doing the same thing every time.
Are there any plugins that you are like loving working with?
So many. Man, where do I start? I mean, I do love the Mic DSP stuff. Every mix, FabFilter, Pro Q3, for sure, 5 million times. I use Soothe a lot. What else? I love El Rey from Acoustica. Okay. Love that plugin. I love Navy 2 from them. That is always on my drum bus. I use different EQs for different reasons. So like sometimes like one of my meat and potatoes EQs has always been like the Q10 from Waves. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I love the EQ on the Metric Halo channel strip. I love the stuff that Make Believe Studios is doing. They have really great stuff. Very unique stuff. What else? I mean, I use a lot of Wave stuff. I use a bunch of UAD stuff. I love my Bricasti. I know it's not a plugin, but it is a plugin as well. I have the M7 Link. That's what it is. And so I control my Bricasti from a plugin. So technically it's a plugin. But then there's also Seventh Heaven, which is it's one of the best plugin reverbs I've ever heard.
What are you working on right now? Like what are some current projects you got going on?
By the time this airs, I think we will have launched. I hope we will have launched. But yeah, I'm actually starting my own microphone company. And
so exciting.
Very exciting. I partnered up with Langston Massengale, who owns Handsome Audio that makes the Zulu. And he has another company called LMI, and he makes incredible transformers. That's a whole new transformer technology. And we collaborated on this next lineup of microphones. And so he's I think before all is said and done, Langston will be recognized as one of the great geniuses in gear and inventing and designing gear probably ever. I mean, he's a genius. He has the most unconventional ideas that make so much practical sense. So this microphone company, I'm calling it Circle Audio. He's basically designing all of these mics for me. And the way these things sound sonically is just unbelievable. And I say this with the intent that everyone hear them. They are, in my opinion, the best microphones ever made. These designs from Langston. And they're basically innovations on legendary microphones that people haven't even attempted because people have been purists for so long that they want exactly that. And so what Langston figured out is that, you know, with manufacturing now and the advancements that have been made in technology and in technology manufacturing, you can do better. You can still have that sound, but improve it. And so on a 251 that literally in blind shootouts has beaten the original 251s. And I mean, when has that ever been offered? You know, you make some sort of concession historically, but not in this case. So we're gonna roll that out first, and then there are other mics to follow. But yeah, I'm really excited about it, and the feedback has just been unbelievable, and the support has been phenomenal, and I'm very excited.
Can't wait to hear them and try them out. I think this sounds like such a great partnership between both of your expertises coming together and formulating this new product. I'm excited to hear it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really very excited. And you definitely will hear it because I'll make sure I get you one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I know that we skipped over like a bunch of years. I think we kind of like jumped from somewhere 2009 to 2019. Yes. There's been tremendous growth. I know that much. But what have been some highlights of that time?
So I guess
it doesn't all have to be highlights, by the way. It can be like, you know, learning lessons. I'm sure listeners would also love to hear that because quite honestly, it's part of this whole industry.
Absolutely. I feel like careers mirror the ebbs and flows of the business. And so, you know, I don't think there's anyone that's ever had a career that just went straight up and then stayed there or kept going up. It doesn't happen like that. It goes like this, and you come down and you come back up. And that's part of the reason that people don't get necessarily tired of an artist to the point where they don't want to listen to them, or when they release something, they're not interested. And so it's kind of the same thing with anything career-wise, not just for artists, but for engineers and for songwriters and producers. You know, you have your waves, and then you get the crest, and then you get the dip. And so I think there were definitely low points in my career. Generally, it was when I chose to leave certain situations that weren't for me. And, you know, it's the disappointment of having those expectations, not just of the people that you're dealing with, but of yourself, you know, to make the most of it. And there's a certain point where you say, this is not for me. And so there were times where I chose to leave certain situations that from the outside, people were like, oh my God, like, this is incredible. And, you know, I feel like the universe tells you when you're doing the right things. And so if you do the right things, opportunities will open up for you. And sometimes the scariest part is actually making that decision and saying, I'm going to walk through that door. And you don't know what's on the other side of it. But I guess it's just, you know, where faith in yourself and the drive that you have to create other opportunities comes in. And you just say, whatever's on the other side of that door, I'm going to take that and turn that into something. Yeah. But I've had some great experiences. I mean, I spent a couple years with Cash Money. That was great. I love Slim, and I mean, Josh Berkman was awesome. I did a lot of work with Chris Richardson, who was an artist that was signed to them. Great singer, great guy, and I got to work with legends from that point all the way through the few years that I spent with Timbaland immediately following that. And that was great. And actually, it was funny because having known Jimmy for so many years before I was in the Timbaland camp, like we kind of, you know, we had a different type of experience at that time. And a lot of it involved him telling me, Keith, don't do that. Don't do that. But he, you know, he had my back, and I appreciated it. I remember there was one time This was back during when we were all at Larrabee for the Justin Timberlake 2020 experience, when that whole album was being done. And I remember I was cutting Tim on a verse for something one night, and I was dead tired. I had been there probably working for 16 hours straight, and I was just dead. And Tim, it was like 3:30 in the morning, almost 4 in the morning. And I was like on my way out, and Tim wanted to cut this verse. So he goes in there, and normally I'm like a stickler for every little detail, and like I don't make mistakes. I do make mistakes, but I don't make mistakes. And so so his level was kind of low, and rather than turn up the output gain on the 1073, I turned up the input gain because I wasn't thinking. And he cuts this verse and he's done. And then he comes in and he's like, "Keith, why I sound like that?" And I was like, "Sound like what?" And I couldn't really tell because like my ears were fried. And then when I soloed it and listened to it, I went, "Oh." And then I was like, I just overcooked these vocals like big time. And, you know, Tim, like I'd never heard Tim actually like get upset with me for something before. Cause usually he would look at me and be like, "You all right, Keith?" You know, and that's like high praise coming from Tim. And this time he's like, "No, man, you messed it up. You ain't ready. And I was like, "Oh no, like this is like terrible." And I was gonna get up and like leave, not because I was mad, but just because I was like, well, you know, I doubt he's gonna want me to recut him on this. And Jimmy walked in and he's like, "Keith, don't leave. If you leave, it's gonna be real bad. Don't leave. You stay here, and no matter how much you have to take, you take it, and tomorrow he won't even remember this happened. Like it'll be back to work." And so I did, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, it was totally my fault. It was like, you know, everyone has their moments where they just, you know, and so yeah, Jimmy definitely saved me during that time. But anyway, so I spent a lot of time working with Tim. I was really, really lucky. I got to work with legends. I mean, I got to work with Justin. I got to work with Jay-Z and Beyonce and The Dream and T-Pain. And I mean, just so many big artists. I can't even like remember how many there were. And it was great. When I left because primarily when I left the Timbaland camp. Okay. Yeah. I left primarily because I felt like I needed to establish my own thing. You know, there's certain limitations for being part of a camp that's underneath the umbrella of someone as great as Tim, where I was so grateful to be in these sessions and grateful for the opportunities, but you know, they were, at the end of the day, they were Tim sessions, and you can only grow so far. And so it was nothing against Tim at all. If I saw him right now, it would be all love, you know, and I'd run into him a few times since, and it was all love, but you know, I had to kind of establish myself again, you know, and I'd done that prior to him, but then there was that time period where I was identified with that. So when I left, that was when a lot of other great things started happening. And, you know, I got to work with, I got to do some more work with Pitbull, and I had a #1 on the dance charts that I produced and wrote, called Mr. Put It Down, or co-produced and wrote. It was me and my former manager, Aaron Pierce. And so that went #1 on the dance charts. It was Ricky and Pitt. I got to work with on some stuff for Enrique Iglesias. And then I ended up doing the Jill Scott album, the Woman album, and mixing that. And that actually got me my first Grammy nomination. And that was really cool. And we hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 200, and we had multiple #1 singles off of that. And got to work with The Roots, got to work with Black Thought. I mixed his Streams of Thought album. And a lot of other really great stuff happened. It just kind of took not being afraid to be on my own, you know. And if I could do things over again, maybe I would have made certain different decisions. But, you know, I feel like it's important to kind of embrace what happens and what you do with it, you know.
I mean, you've had quite a journey.
Yes.
We might have to do another episode just so we could talk more about some of those experiences.
I'm down.
I mean, it's a lot of time to just like condense in a couple of sentences.
It is.
It's a lot of experiences, a lot of late nights, early mornings, long days. It's really cool when you get to work with people you admire.
Yeah.
I know sometimes people are a little cautious of working with their idols because they don't want, you know, an image that they have of this person to be ruined. Because it happens, you know, sometimes people aren't as great as you think they're going to be.
More than you would think.
But I'm really glad to hear that you've worked with like some incredible people. When it's like that, when you're just like really making a decision for yourself and your own growth personally and professionally, like you're making the right decision, you know, even if you stumble at some point along the way or in the moment, maybe it feels like there's a little dip.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more of like a quiet moment preparing you for another long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for hanging out and sharing your stories. And
I'm happy to be here.
this has been a pleasure. So thank you.
Look at me. I'm on a podcast with Kiara Moreno. I mean, this is like
It's exciting stuff.
This is exciting stuff. I can't wait to do this again.